Hello, this is Kristen with NTMA. Thank you for joining us for the third of the Employee Management and Benefits webinar series. Today, we'll be hearing from Dan Bagley on interviewing techniques and spotting a good fit. Dan, you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Kristen. Happy to do that. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate the dialogue that's taken place from the last few sessions. Hiring, selection of talent, keeping talent, coaching plans, the dynamic of the athletes who make our businesses tick are among the very most important management and leadership skills that define really our success. So that's why it's so important to me. Most of you know, I love NTMA, I love the family businesses, I love the hearts of the NTMA companies. One thing we hear over and over, however, is many NTMA owners and employees have not worked for, especially the family members, have not worked for other companies before. That is to say, they haven't competed for a job, they haven't been through a rigorous selection process, and many of them have never been reviewed. So some of these practices can be new if you grew up in a family business or were, let's say, a journeyman through whatever process in your family company. Some of these ideas may be very new to you. So I do want to invite you. There is a chat screen on the dialog box for the webinar, GoToWebinar control panel. And if you'd like to shoot any questions along the way, comments, boos, whatever it might, hisses, whatever it might be, please let me know. I am not, and let me be clear, I am not a recruiter. My work, the work of my company is competitive business strategy. I get involved in recruiting and I became very committed to the process about 15 years ago when I was doing the strategy for a very large Fortune 1000 company where I was the chief marketing officer. And I began to realize that the implementation of strategy or even excellent tactics or capabilities are so dependent upon people. So it's been a very important process in my development as an executive, and now we place, in my firm, we'll place 8 to 10 people per year. We actually conduct certain strategic searches where the strategy depends on it, where it's an absolute crucial role, and we do that as a part of the invested change process to implement strategy. So that's the angle that I come from. I'm not recruiting. I'm not trying to pursue or advocate anything about your specific recruiting assignments. You can work that out with the recruiting resources that you have, and NTMA has some really great partners that do recruiting full time. We will address later on one of the key questions, which is, are the same techniques that we'll discuss appropriate for shop workers at various levels as well as management? The answer to this is yes. I'll answer it now, but you can imagine that the scale of what you might do might be different. So you would invest to the level of the contribution and risk that the person, that role would have in your company. So without further ado, I'm going to move us ahead. We'll come back to some of these points as the deck progresses. What we have planned for this discussion is a bit of a review of recruiting and marketing for what you need, because we're going to pick up where the last webinar ended, where the last conference call ended. We were talking about how to find good candidates, where to shop for them, where to fish for them, how to recruit them, how to locate them. And we ended there talking about the going where the people that we want, where they hang out, where they spend time, where they are likely to be found. Then we're going to talk about discussion of selection and some lessons that we have all painfully learned, some standard methods of selection from manual to automated. That is, there are new e-tools that do lots of word screening, so we'll talk about that a bit. We'll talk about processes to screen using some tools. I'm going to give you some details on an interview method, and one interview method. There are many. I believe this one case study of an interview method may help you. You can select other methods, of course, but we'll cover the basic principles that I've learned sort of in my career so far about the hiring, about interviewing, screening, and that process. So looping back to the prior conversation, with unemployment where it is, and we'll look at some numbers here in just a second, the people that we want in our organizations, the hot new talent, the critical role, whether it's a procurement person or a programmer or a VP of operations, a quality manager, the good ones aren't sitting on the couch. They're not waiting for a job. So in a tight unemployment environment, while I don't advocate, of course, catering, if you will, to applicants, but I do think that we have to treat applicants with a great deal of respect today because they have many options. And so to get those A players, and we'll talk about what that means in a bit, to get those A players involved, to get those A players interested in our company, we're going to have to realize these aren't people that are unemployed for whatever reason. Chances are they have options of things to do. And this is the only other loop back sort of slide to the prior conversations. I think there are several myths about hiring, and these are important as you select candidates out of the pool that you generate. I don't believe in millennialism. I know some fantastic young people with extraordinary work ethic, with extraordinary ambition, who are on the internet learning. They're self-motivated to learn, etc. So I don't think that treating a generation with a broad brush is constructive. And moreover, I don't think putting that lens on, if you will, a young generation of workers is constructive. Another myth is that people want to change jobs, and they do not. Everybody, even the president of the company, starts low on the totem pole when they join a company. They have to learn the people, they have to learn the customs, they have to learn their way around, they have to earn respect and earn credibility. People don't want to change jobs, and they're only going to do that for the hope and promise of growth and a fulfilling work-life balance, good work that they feel like they can contribute to, and a healthy work environment. It's also a myth that money isn't the main factor in most hires, especially now with the tight employee markets, with over 96.5% of people who want a job having a job. Getting people to move isn't easy, and there have to be strong motivators, and money is one of them, especially people who've been trapped for several years in a 2% salary increase standard budget and haven't had merit rewards, money will be, in fact, very important to them. Top talent is looking for a new job is another myth. The top players are typically appreciated. They typically have lots of swag and sway in their current firms. So the top talent out there is doing what top talent does. That is making itself better. It's working on the very front lines of business. It's not spending top talent isn't typically spending its time cruising through monster boards looking for another 10% salary increase. So getting top talent and attracting them is not easy. It's also not a buyer's market. I think that's frankly old school thinking. I think that's high unemployment thinking, and frankly, really just that attitude really sort of doesn't attract people anymore. It's actually a buyer's and seller's market. That is, it's a company. Young people, especially high talented young folks, are looking for places they feel comfortable investing their careers. They want to feel like they're on an escalator of growth. They want to feel like they're being challenged and developed and given more opportunity, that their ideas are of value. So it is a balanced market for employees. Our last couple of points here. Companies are not alike in their attractiveness to talent. And now, well, I'm not just talking about, free snacks, and I'm not talking about childcare. Culture and how companies are run and the voice that the employees have, and just a myriad of factors. If you ask a person who's interviewed at 2 or 3 companies, they can very quickly compare for you criteria and what they found. Well, it's a little dark and dingy over there. Things are kind of old. I don't see a lot of new equipment, this or that. So companies are not alike with regard to the attractiveness of a firm. And the last point I think is super important. I think that the role of HR has frankly deeply changed. We used HR for many, many years as a screen and as a facilitator of the hiring function. HR, human resources, that is, has shifted much more to talent development, much more to the benefits equation, to keeping employees. HR does not know the work of the functions of the business. So while you can enumerate certain things on a job description, certain things on a competency sheet, very, very quickly, the supervisor of a role is the best person to screen and the best person to determine fit. I think we lose an awful lot of candidates to being screened by people who really aren't literate in the work of the prospective employee. So a few myths about the hiring marketplace and the recruiting marketplace that can inform sort of how we treat these folks, how we think about them, the words that we say. And in fact, while it's not the topic today, I believe that the job posting that companies make is the single most important factor in which talent reaches out to you. I believe that the listing document, whether you've listed it on a website, posted it internally or externally, an association web job board, any other place, I believe that what you say there, are you an exciting, dynamic company that has an opportunity for this kind of person and all those sorts of things, or do you have a list of requirements? And so that's one of the most important factors, how that solicitation is made and how that offer is made into the marketplace. That sort of plays out these myths. So let's move into screening. Let you think about this slide for a moment. We're going to reference in this presentation the work of Dr. Brad Smart. There are another 6 or 7 individuals who've done a great deal of work in the hiring and recruiting area. Systematic processes for choosing people to join and establishing fit have become very, very important in business because of what Brad calls the cost of mishires. If you hire someone, they work for you for 80 or 90 days and they fail, you've lost the time, the money, you've lost credibility with your ongoing staff. It's a very difficult situation when we mishire, and typically we blame the person that somehow they showed stripes that we didn't see during the hiring process. Well, they didn't tell us this, they didn't disclose this, their references didn't tell us this or that. The answer to that is in part the conversation that we have with them, and this will inform when you're looking at a handful of resumes or a group of resumes on one of the electronic job boards that we talked about as a recruiting method. If you have some of these criteria in mind, immediately you'll have a screening tool that is different than, oh, they went to this school or that school, they claim they have responsibility for this or that. We think only, and I'll say when I say only, we think 70 to 80% of the attention in selection and in screening should be focused on what the person has done. What they tell us they did, what they tell us their role was, how they tell us the story of who else was involved, what they claim their responsibility in that success to be, how insightful and honest they are about what went well and what didn't go well in that project or that achievement, are far richer, deeper conversations than how do you approach difficult employees? Do you like the color? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite animal? These abstractions that psychologists use aren't very useful to folks like you and I in determining someone's fit for a role in our companies. So we're going to talk much more about this notion of what have you done. And in a stack of resumes that you receive, in 3 candidates that you have perhaps narrowed things down to, ordering them based on what they've done, what its relevance is to you, and what your critical tasks are that you need completed, that contribution to your team. Immediately, this helps you screen resumes and candidates very differently. Now, the most dangerous candidate selection that's ever done is that which is done by someone that knows someone else, and they go get that person from some other company because they knew them. I knew them in this last job, and all these soft references. I think all those references are excellent inputs to the recruiting process. But at the end of the day, what you really need on a typical $5 million NTMA shop has 40 to 60 people. And that's a very small team where the contributions of every individual matters. And therefore, this notion of what have you done and how you have done that, et cetera, and then establishing the veracity, truth, and credibility about that with other people that they did the project with is the very best way that I know to reduce mishires and find people that are really set, to find A players that can contribute to your business. So let's sort of walk through. I try to leave these calls with some deliverables for since my experience with Brad 16 years ago. I went to a training seminar in Chicago with Brad and Jeff Smart and with some other colleagues of mine in the corporation at that time. People have interpreted top grading to be some rank ordering of employees and to be some grueling system. Most people are intimidated by the fact that it has a couple hundred pages in the book. But I'm going to share 16 questions that I learned from Brad Smart and doing exercises with him that I have honed the last several years. And let's see if this what have you done methodology can work. There is, within the top grading materials and all this, I'd sent you to the top grading website. I have no vested interest. I'm known and respected Brad. We've worked together, et cetera, but I have zero financial interest in any of his products, books, et cetera. And I also have no qualms about your using, some other system. But I'd like to use this one today as a reference. So in the package that is before a hiring manager for every candidate interview that Brad does, Brad advocates tandem interviews. That means two people do the interview. One person does the interview, conducts the questions, they take notes, etc. And there is a second person, much like a football color commentator or in any other type of environment. That person would ask periodically color or detail or drill down questions. But the tandem interview results in the ability of two different perceptions to dialogue about what they heard. Normally, after a deep conversation about what someone has done, I can feel if they're real, if they're Memorex, if they want to tell me how they think about things, what they believe, all those sorts of things. I know I have someone who isn't as focused, and they're not they've been on the bench or a follower much more than they've been a high-performing contributor to an organization. So this form is used for every job that someone has. So let's say this person has 5 jobs, and we're going to get them into an interview discussion. By this point, they've toured our facility. They've met several people on our staff. We've had chemistry conversations. We have felt how it would be like to be around each other. They're interested in us. We're interested in them. We're going to spend some time working on the fit together. So we sit down at a table and we go through. There's a page like this for education. There's a page like this for military service, etc. But it's a standard set of 16 questions in the work history to get to what have you done. So who was the employer? How long did you work there? What did you make? I mean, typical questions. What's important about the backgrounding questions is I don't really care what they did in the application. I want to know if they've prepared themselves for the interview. I want to know if they know that they're there. They know they're going to be interviewed. I want to know if they're aware of what they've done. They'll tell us about how they found the job. They'll tell us the title that they had in that job, whether it was work center supervisor, I was a machine programmer, I was a etc. And the next 2 questions, 4 and 5, are where this whole "what have you done" really begins to unfold. And so we say, Tommy, when you joined, XYZ company, what did they want you to do? Why were they trying to fill the role, and what did they want you to accomplish there? Well, they just wanted me to be a machinist. Is that all, Tommy? They just wanted you to be no, well, no, really, they were trying to get into self-inspection. They were trying to move into 5-axis. They were trying to do these things, and so they hired me because, et cetera. This is why they hired me and what they were expecting of me. And then next, well, what responsibilities did they give you? What accountability did they describe for you? What did they assign you to do? So we moved from this first sort of opening conversation, very, very easy to have. It's just a story. I tell people it's not a lot different than a, tell me about your life sort of conversation, but it's very structured. Now, along the way, we're doing, in addition to collecting data, this you can observe the process that is happening between you and the candidate. And so we say, Tommy, so you got into this shop environment, you got this exciting new job, they expect it's there. What did you find there? What do you mean? Well, how was it to work there? What condition was the equipment in? I mean, what did you see when you came in? This is an open-ended conversational question that allows them to tell you and demonstrate insight, and to demonstrate with some maturity. You can watch them articulate what they found. I'm not looking for big words, and I'm not looking for psychological explanations. I'm looking for the tools weren't organized. There were no standard operations boards. They were measuring on piece count. They were inspecting work 2 or 3 times. I mean, I'm looking for insightful statements like that, where we can learn how Tommy saw that place when he went in, and there's much we can learn about that. And so, Tommy, while you were there in this role, what were your successes? What were your accomplishments? How did you achieve those? Now, these little blanks that are on this interview guide don't have enough space for this. So what I do is I sort of have the papers over to the side, but I use a ruled, just a pad, and I just make notes going all the way through this thing. So I just process-wise, that's how it sort of works for me. And then I say, Tom, that's really amazing. Who else do you work with? And you can fill in a couple of other qualifying questions around these successes and failures, or these successes and accomplishments. Next, we move to failures and mistakes. So what didn't work so well? Now, did you have any failures while you were? No, everything went great. Man, I was the best employee they ever had. They should have never fired me. Oops, what you want is honesty. A players, high-performing athletes know that they miss baskets. They know that they throw the ball over people's heads. They know that they piss the coach off. They know that something or other, that they make mistakes along the way. And we're looking for the perception and insight and the integrity of the individual that says, man, I really blew it. I had this job and it went south, and I scrapped 37 parts, and I felt awful. My boss didn't say much, but I felt really bad putting all that stuff in the scrap bin. Well, what did you learn from that? How did it change your work, in the future? So this 6, 7, and 8 here are really that opportunity for you to see what they see about themselves, about the workplace, etc. You can learn a tremendous amount from them telling you the stories of what they did, what they were responsible for, as opposed to what they think about this, what they think about that, and what did they like when it Now, I do care what they find the most enjoyable about their work and the least enjoyable about that role. Well, there were a couple of hard cases in the group, and, it took me a while, but I earned their respect. And for me to learn how to do that and earn people's respect, that was the most important, enjoyable part of this job, The least enjoyable, I had a couple of people I just had to replace, and I went to the boss, and it's really a struggle for me, and they're going to tell you a story about this, again, well, they didn't really have barbecues on Friday. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. If it's trivial or important conversation, you can judge from that and use that in the overall body of information that you're collecting in your overall judgment about this individual. This talent question is, did you hire anybody? Did you fire anybody? Who worked for you? How many worked for you? How many did you hire during your tenure there? How many did you let go? Tell me some stories around that. We want to know, people say I was responsible for 1,500 people. Really? Maybe you were. That's tremendous. So just, tell me about your organization. So these people reported to you directly. Did they do this? Did they do that? So we're looking for poignant collections of facts, once again, that tell us more and more about what they did. And one of the things they did was they left. The story of why they left is a very important story. It's an important story of honesty. If I interview 10 candidates and not one of them tells me they've been fired, somebody's lying. We want to get to the truth. We want to get to honesty. It's totally fine for people to have left a company because they disagreed with their boss or this or that. But if they tell you the story that 3 different bosses were unreasonable, there comes then a pattern developing where you could predict with some likelihood that a 4th or 5th boss along the way is going to be a lunatic. So in each job, we are asking the exact same 16 questions. We are discussing that period in their lives when they were doing this work and what they learned and what their maturity level was and all those sorts of things. Last couple of questions are really where sort of thoughtfulness and fairness come out. So who was your supervisor? What was their title? What are they doing now? This person was so instrumental in your career. We'd love to talk to them so we know how to coach you well, all those sorts of things. The candidates need to know that we're going to check their references, and they need to know that it's not going to be an HR person. It's not going to be just, did they work there? We're going to attempt to have a conversation. If this person is a really solid reference, we want to know their supervisor's reflections on those same accomplishments, and do those match up? And there's a slide later in the deck that will show you a little bit about that thread of reference conversation. Asking the candidate, well, so what were your supervisor's strengths and what were your supervisor's weaknesses, is a very telling question. That was one of the most innovative ones that when I got this document, why do I care what they think about their boss? Well, it turns out it matters a great deal. And I had great respect for this person. They very they really knew their craft and all that sort of thing. But oh man, they were a micromanager. They sort of wouldn't let me run. I wanted to go back to college, and they wouldn't fight for me for tuition assistance. So I just didn't feel like they were really, my boss was committed to education. And then the last question on this page. So think back to that time in your career when you were doing this job and you were interacting with your supervisor. What did your supervisor appreciate of your strengths? And what did your supervisor tell you would be really good for you to work on? What development needs might you have? So here I have on one page, if you will, okay, yes, I may have taken a page and a half or 2 pages of notes, but I have a rather detailed synopsis of what this person did. And if I do that 4 or 5 times, yep, takes a couple hours. Well, if you're hiring the head programmer for your 50-person business, that role is worth your investment of time. I tell people there are two key reasons to go this far in an interview discussion. The first reason is fit. Does the person fit our culture? And frankly, by what you're describing, and you can give them some information along the way, this is an extraction conversation, but you can provide them along the way some indications by what you're asking and how that helps them understand the fit at your company. So both directions. So fit is the first reason to do this. The second reason is the coaching plan. If you make a little list of coachable points or educational opportunities as you do the interview, by the end, surprise, surprise, you'll have 4 or 5 key points you could discuss with a candidate and say, what if we developed a coaching plan, because I hear you want to grow. What if we develop, some kind of a personal career development plan that, I hear you need, more financial skill, or you feel more confident with more financial training. I hear that you want some advanced metallurgy understanding so you know how to work with, new grades of materials. And you said a couple of times you were nervous doing presentations. Maybe there's something we could do to work on those 2 or 3 things, and then would that help move your career ahead? So fit and the coaching plan are the key reasons that I spend the time to do this. And I will say the candidates, unless they've been through some top grading process or some other heavy, all the military guys, the officers, all that you might encounter have likely been through such an interview process. Most of them appreciate that you care enough to get to know them this well. If you couple what I just described, what have you done? If you couple that then with a thread of reference interview with 3 people from their past background accomplishments, you can increase your stickiness of your hires by about 50%. If the supervisor, man, I thought Tommy was awesome. Oh, he told you he did that whole project. Well, there was actually a team. Well, what role did Tommy have on that team? Well, Tommy was really in a QA role at that time in his career. Well, did he lead the team? No. So in Tommy's mind, he led the team, and his supervisor's telling you that he actually had a more minor role. Some alarm bells should start to go off in your mind. Conversely, when that person's coach says, "This is one of the best, young workers I ever had. They were constantly learning. They were doing this. They were doing that. Yep, he was on this team like he told you he was. Yep, he came up with a spreadsheet model and sold it to the rest of the team. They bought in. This happened, that happened." So 2 very different scenarios based on what that person says. Now, I know that for all kinds of lawsuit reasons and others, it is harder and harder to find companies that will provide references. But individuals, if you've really got an A player in front of you and their experiences are what they said they were, they're not going to hesitate to give you those 2 or 3 references, and it may be their very best. And if you're a little skillful in this thread of reference conversation and you invest that time, if this is a key employee for your company, if this position really matters, and if the cost of a mishire is high, it's worth it. And the employee then can appreciate, you go back to, man, I talked to those guys about your coaching plan. Tommy, I'm telling you, I feel so honored, that you've decided to invest your career with us. I think you're a fit here. I think we can improve your skills, et cetera. So it's a really different scenario than, what's your favorite animal? What'd you do in the 3rd grade? Those sorts of things. Kristen, I just saw a message that I've lost my connection. So could you just verify for me that you can see a bell curve on the screen? Kristen? Okay, we're back. Kristen? Hello? Let me just do a little quick process check here. Bear with me just a minute. I'm just making sure my bandwidth, I'm out of the country, and I'm just making sure that my bandwidth is working. Sorry about that, guys. Just bear with me for a moment here. Interesting. Just want to make sure that the session is being recorded. I am pretty certain that it is. So I know you're on hold, and I apologize for this brief delay. Interesting. So, well, I'm going to continue. So I'm going to hope that you are seeing, because it appears now that the connection is there. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to hope that you can see now the slide. I hate the curve, but okay, now let's talk about most people. Well, you know, I hated the curve in college, you know, and grading tests on the curve never really made fair sense to me. Wasn't really an honest appraisal of the connection of individuals and the value of individuals. But it is true that a small number of people are really, really excellent, and a small number of people are underperformers. Most people find themselves in this center section, at least in most capabilities in their careers. So what we're looking for, if we're trying to find people who are high-end contributors, such as in a military program, such as in a a small shop or a heavily engineered shop or a safety of flight shop that really matters. We're looking for people on the far right-hand side of this curve. So this vetting process, oh man, you get this huge stack of paper that comes in the old days when we placed ads in the newspapers and we used recruiting methods, which resulted in lots of paper. It's a daunting task. I know that it is, but again, frankly, the number of responses is very low these days. You're going to get less responses than you did in the past by simple mathematics. The simple facts are that unemployment is very low. People are not out of work very long, and they're not out of work, and not very many of them are out of work. It's very important to be kind to applicants and to be really aware of them. I think screening their inputs, whether you use Indeed or Monster or whatever, I mean, I'll show you a bit of a screening tool. What's important is to decide what you're looking for in advance of the screening. If you've actually ever competed for one of these roles, somebody said, they ask you, what do you want to do for a living? or why do you want to work here? What you want to make sure is what you need and what the candidate is are in fact the same thing. So if you are fishing during this low unemployment period, if you are fishing with good attractors, you've got a good workplace culture, an environment where leadership not just values but treats employees as peers with different roles. If there really is an opportunity for advancement, and if stability and growth, man, I got to tell you, people that have achieved want those kinds of cultures. So the people that we want to win strategy matters, when the role matters, people that express numbers, people that express facts, people that can relate the story when they're not hesitant about naming names, when they're not hesitant about sharing non-confidential details with you about what happened, and when they're not nervous about telling you about references. There are many positive signals, okay, from such a person. What we want and deciding what we want is the number one factor in screening the resumes. So I have some thoughts about that for you. I'd like to give you, some takeaways also within Brad Smart's materials. In the interview guide, he has a list of some 35 different competencies that you could pick from. They range from intelligence to change leadership, stress management, and as you and I both know, there are other competencies, technical competencies, that are going to be very important. Perhaps it's some industry familiarity, or perhaps it's some other skill. Recently, Uber went through a change in leadership, as you probably heard. Meg Whitman at HP didn't get the job, and neither did Mr. Imelt from GE. What the board focused on in that selection at Uber is what that person had done in a startup environment with a lot of young developers that were entrepreneurial in spirit, that that had lots of public attention, and they picked the head of another software company. What you're looking for is critical. I'm not going to talk about Raj very much, other than to say he is a quintessential leader. He's kind, he's benevolent, he's decisive. He has many of the attributes of an excellent leader, and he has a track record that he can share with you. That's the kind of employee that we're looking for, obviously, not at that grandiose scale. But if you could compile a list, let's say, of some competencies that are super important to you, and then pick 5 or 8 of these that are defining for this role. Pick 5 or 8, like resourcefulness. This is going to be a person that's going to, retool machines. We're going to need somebody who's really open and a learner and all sorts of things. So there's a few competencies that would be defining. And there might be some technical ones, like metallurgy or detailed tooling knowledge. There might even be some soft skills, like listening. So I divided these 2 pages into really 2 different sections, some leadership competencies and perhaps some technical competencies, but deciding exactly what it is you want and not deviating from that. Now, if it's a forklift driver, this is a much easier list to compile. But if this is if this is your first vice president of engineering, or if this is a new chief operating officer for the company, the more time you spend defining the real critical skills that will propel you ahead or will hold you back, the easier the screening is going to go. And if you focus on then, as you get candidates into the process, what they have done, I think that, like Steve Jobs, you can accumulate a small team of A players that outrun your competition, outperform and outthink your competition. An A player is the top 10% of the talent available in the market. That doesn't mean the top 10% necessarily in monetary terms, but it does mean a person who is in the top 10% of the talent available. The elite military programs, and I won't point fingers in any particular one, but the elite military programs are willing to take 95% attrition because they're only going to field certain capabilities and win versus the competition. This is true on sports teams. This is true in academic circles. This is true in all kinds of environments. If you just want B players that follow, that go to the watering hole every day, that show up and are loyal, yes, I agree. The world is run by B players and by sergeants. But it is the Douglas MacArthurs and the Winston Churchills and the thoughtful entrepreneurs who are responsible for our family businesses across NTMA. Those people are special people in a very small number. And if you are reliant upon those skills, I encourage you to think about the competencies that you need with a view to just how good they are. Last couple of notes. Many of the software packages have screening tools. I told the group before, in my particular case, we have been using Indeed for about 3 years now with a great deal of success. If you're spending your time cruising LinkedIn, trying to get people to call you back for jobs, good luck. There are people that get messages when certain jobs pop up. So they may not be looking, but the most astute job hunters out there, and some of the most astute top sort of end players, if an A player is getting ready or is becoming disenchanted and is thinking about a move, they're going to go fishing in one of these pools, and all of these have screening tools. There are gobs of them. Once again, my favorites are Indeed and Execunet. Both of them have screening tools for applicants. So you can accumulate a hot list, you can down select them, you can do it however you want. I know, a lot of people I work with want me to just print off the top 10 resumes, and we work off of paper and off of PDFs. I think this is a good place to stop. But I want to stop with what I call my bonus page. Don't hire unless you must. We are going to face a business softening in 2019, late 2018, 2019. You don't want to build your organization up and then have to shrink it, that sort of thing. I think if you focus, though, on making sure you have A players in almost every role, this is the best offense, this is the best defense. When you hire, there is a risk of these new employees, and it cannot be avoided, but it can be, as we've discussed today, mitigated. The training and development of known employees is a much lower risk if you have a person who is willing to give themselves to the process. Loyalty isn't a good qualifier for a leadership role or a critical role. There are many places where loyal is useful, but in critical job roles, not the best place. If you need new positions, I encourage you to rotate your own people. This will develop more respect for your organization, more positive Glassdoor ratings, more positive referrals to other employees from outside the company. There's a few NTMA companies that are really on a respect roll by prospective employees, and they're sought after. People aspire to work there. I encourage you to focus on only hiring A players when you do hire, because driving productivity is far more efficient with your funds than recruiting or hiring. And if you've got A players, you can drive for productivity. I always enjoy doing these seminars. They're not as interactive as I like. Your comments, questions are absolutely welcome. We have a few minutes remaining. I'd be happy to respond to any questions or comments, or if you'd like to send me an email, happy to discuss it further. Kristen, thanks for having me again, and I look forward to more sessions in the future. Kristen? Hello. Now I can hear someone. This is Dan Bagley. Any questions? Hello? Well,